and go back to our regular programming. Just quickly, so the Doris Duke grant, this is unofficial, got approved, which is excellent, and it provides us money for another sort of, the description was another backend resource person, but I think that's, if we, depending on how our hiring goes, if we find someone, we want to adjust that job description for the technical skill set, we can certainly do that. And I'm working on another pass at a job description now. And just quickly, I'm not sure we should store this, but I wanted to talk about summer travel dates, just because I know people go on the road and things like that. Like, I'm going to be out of pocket the last 2 weeks of June. And really, like, I'll be in Asia, so it'll be like really off the grid. Or, I mean, I'll probably be online a little bit because it's modern life, but there's going to be a certain delay, so I wouldn't expect fast response times for those 2 weeks. But if people just, I'm not sure where we can, maybe I can just make a private Google Doc and we can share those dates among us rather than just the typical sort of have it in semi-public spheres. But if anyone wants to quickly share now any plans they know they're going to be out of pocket for an extended period of time, feel free to share that now or later with the doc. And then more hiring updates. So we have approvals, and so that's going out. And I'm going to start doing some job boards this week too. I first started with just like my immediate network, but then wanted to sort of expand the job board out. Francis, if you have any suggestions on like job board that specifically, I have a few, but if you know of any from like personal experience, good ones, especially for recruiting color who code, that would be great too. I found some just through some like Google searching, but if you know of some others, that'd be great.
Is the job description posted any place I can look, or?
Yeah, I can send that to you in a second. And then for the project coordinator, I'm working with Jake and Marcy and Lourdes on that. We got some good feedback from a lot of the analysts and what they're hoping to find in that role. And Jake and Marcy are working on a draft job description of that now. I think we'll hopefully have something like, Jake said he's away this weekend, so maybe early next week. And then, so, I know this came up a couple weeks ago, just quickly, about in their sheets showing the same diff, and he circled back with me that I thought at first we thought it sounded like unfortunately I wasn't at the call, but it sounded like the discussion between Toli and Rob that it was something that would naturally just happen. I mean, if you're on different domains and the crawler happens to hit the other, the same page, it will it'll record it. But what was interesting is Jake was saying that, and he looked at a couple of sheets, that it all started on the same cycle, like March 6th, and he was getting 0 before, and then he started getting some after the 6th, which was sort of was interesting because I thought it was a little, I thought it would be a little more random than that. And then also, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I just thought I would bring it up again. So I'm not sure what to do about it, because it could also be something where, like, if Virginistas sort of tweak the way they crawl, then like that's just how they crawl, and it's really hard for us to tell if that happened or not. But I think I'm going to try to go back and see if anything on our side changed around that time, because I do know that back in March, there were some changes to the back end. So I'll sort of try to do some digging to see if anything changed on that period during that week or the cycle before. So these are the last two things that sort of are related that I wanted to just bring up, and hopefully I'll circle back with, well, not hopefully, but I'll circle back with Rob and Dan afterwards too. Is the one is I think we're sort of in a holding pattern with some of this work because Kevin and I don't know how to push the staging, like for things like the processing repo. And so, and as well as, the output emails didn't go out on Sunday night. So, the emails is an important thing that we need to investigate what's happening. I'll reach out to the team again to see if they're able to respond because there are no sheets to analyze this week yet. But the other thing is, if there's a hotfix, that's fine. But otherwise, we should schedule some walkthroughs and record them just to have Kevin and I sort of learn how to we need to rerun the sheets at some point, how to do that. We can record it too so others can follow along later at a later date. But then also things like how to push the staging. I was sort of, with the staging stuff, I was sort of holding back on it because of some of the work that Francis and Dan were doing. But I'm wondering if we should, if the usefulness of having some of that information already sort of shared, even though it might change in the future, just so that Kevin can sort of, do some stuff, because we're ready to start testing some of the, importing from Inner Archive. And we want to do that in staging, obviously, before we push to production. Kevin, did you have anything to add on those fronts?
I mean, from the last message from Dan, it sounded like he was very, very close to getting the Ansible stuff done to staging. And then he mentioned that Francis might be able to finish it off. Francis, did you have any communication or any a gauge of that involvement or what's happening at the final stages?
No, I've been away the last 2 weeks. I was preparing for a conference last week, and then prior to that. So no, I haven't. And when I talked to Ray, I thought it was working on, because right now all of your infrastructure is on the public internet, and I broached the subject of trying to put them in an unrunnable virtual private cloud. And I've worked on, I have a branch on the Ansible role that does that. I don't like it yet. I hope to talk with Dan out of band about, what my thinking is, because in order to do that, we'd have to decide how we're moving everything inside a virtual private cloud. That means we relaunch the VMs, we put them in, the 10 network. We'll have to decide what network the staging is going to be. We'll have to decide what the production is going to be. And I don't want to go too far that rabbit hole until he and I are in sync, or at least agreeing in principle. Setting up a VPC via Ansible is relatively trivial, but moving a live infrastructure into the VPC that you do, it requires a little more care. So, either I can, set up a VPC and have Dan import it because he knows the infrastructure better than I do, or we can work together because we'll have to change some of the already roles that we have in there because there's a lot of duplication, because it's, where it gets its IP will now be from the created virtual private cloud instead of, assigning it an IP. So it's not a refactor, but it feels like it. So until Dan and I can either, we can go, comment heavily about what I'm thinking, which I think is the best strategy, because I feel I can only devote so much time and still be a good employee. So, when I do, ideally, if I'd seen him today, my strategy would be, all right, I've pushed these into my working in progress branch. I'll open up the other repo that I have to say, this is a working VPC that I have. It's fairly vanilla. You can incorporate these into the edgy current working ones. And so, I mean, there's many ways we can do this. That's my thinking, but in lieu of speaking with him, I'm hesitant to comment. I do think moving to a VPC is a good strategy going forward. There's nothing wrong with what we currently do, but it always feels safer when you know that all your servers no one can get access to them except through a Bastion host. So yeah, that's where I am. And again, like I said, the last 2 weeks I've had things that have taken my attention away. And then, speaking of where you'll be next week, I'll going for another conference, and it's basically, conferencing season. So once you hand me that Google Doc, I can let you know what my availability looks like.
Okay. Yeah, that's super helpful. I'll try to see that and connect you and Dan to continue the conversation. I do know that Dan had a work emergency about a week ago that hopefully has been resolved, but he was sort of like really under the gun to fix some stuff. Kevin, do you have it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thanks for that, Francis. It's very helpful to hear. I think the last time we heard from Dan, he said he might hopefully be available to by tomorrow, end of this week. Personally, I feel like we should just wait for him to finish the Ansible deployment to staging instead of he's going to come back and then why have him go through the Kubernetes when he's so close to finishing the Ansible. And that's just my feeling.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree too. It's just, I think I'm also eager to start having some of these processes sort of recorded and shared too. But obviously, yeah. I don't want to go through the exercise like you said and just have it redone, a week or two later. So
yeah.
I think the next step then is to touch base with Dan, just get a check to see what his schedule's like, and then we can maybe keep with the plan or adjust as needed.
Yeah, but I +1 on the getting all that recorded. I'm really antsy about getting that done too.
Kevin, do you want to?
Oh, sorry, you froze. I think you froze there.
But, oh yeah, sorry.
Updates? Are you asking for updates?
Yeah.
Not much on my front. I guess we would discuss kind of in the back channel, but I'm not blocked by anything. But 002 milestones they're just blocked by people not being available to finish off other steps. I did have one question, but Rob's not here. I looked through the 002 milestones for the UI, and a lot of them I feel like can be punted, except for one that he said that was really important. I'm not exactly sure. The basic gist is that for displaying the diffs, we get back the HTML for a page, and then we kind of just stuff it into an iframe so it's not being linked to a page. It's just the HTML is just put into an iframe, and that causes a lot of rendering issues. And then so Rob opened an issue to remove just formatting from HTML, so people can have a bare bones look at a page. So I'm not exactly sure if that's particularly necessary for us to get off of Versionista. But Rob seemed to feel so. So I'd really like to get his input. I'm not sure what his thinking was. There's all this other background stuff, providing a proxy and all these other things that I don't think we've discussed as a group. We haven't had a chance to discuss as a group, so that's why I have a lot of questions. But yeah.
Okay. So that's TBD. But thanks for moving stuff along as much as you can. Because it also, because you're waiting on some other stuff, like not waiting, you particularly being blocked, but you know, we're very close to where we think we can start testing some stuff onto staging, like with the you know, importing from the Internet Archive. And I don't, like Kevin and I were talking about it, and it doesn't seem like there's anything stopping us from doing that right now, except that we just need someone to deploy to staging to see what would happen. So that's sort of like where we're blocked on that. Okay, and I have now 2 system diagrams, and I finally have some capacity this week to finally just like quickly sketch those up and share them. So I'll have that this week. Then also, Totally, do you have any updates on the analyst side?
I've actually been kind of traveling and haven't made last few meetings, so I'm probably not the best messenger, but I do know that there are reports in the pipeline, and maybe seems like the Washington Post story that we've been collaborating on with the Washington Post be coming out tomorrow, which is gonna be pretty cool. And the journalist that we've been working with hasn't said exactly what he found yet. It's not a good process to sort of relay information mid-reporting, but he was like, this is getting interesting, so I'm excited to read it. Other than
Is this
that,
based on a report?
based on Justin Derry's report,
Okay.
about changes to language information changes on the CDC's websites pertaining to climate change, and it's stuff that happened even before inauguration, which is yeah, we've seen cases like that before, so it's another kind of instance of that, but it's quite a dramatic one.
Interesting. I mean, you know, we're even though the timing of the organization's like sort of origins, I mean, we're still a bipartisan organization, so that's interesting.
Totally.
And then also, I don't know if people saw, but there was an op-ed in the Post too, by totally unrelated, right? Which is cool.
Just a quick point. My internet cut out while you were speaking, Ray. But I guess I'm confused why you think that the diff links appearing in multiple sheets are an issue that we like don't know about or don't understand. I had assumed that we were okay with that based on the last conversation that I had with Rob. Maybe, I don't remember if you were there, but basically this is just a byproduct of Rob consolidating kind of organization in the database and having pages attribute to different sites that analysts are looking at. And basically he said it's like on the order of 100 pages that are overlapping across multiple sites. So it's really not that much, and we might as we could try to clean it out, but it's not a huge issue in terms of like duplicate labor or something like that.
Yeah, I only brought it up again because Jake brought it up again, and so maybe my explanation to them wasn't clear enough. But maybe we can share that again too. Like, to me, it doesn't sound like there's anything to do, and the overlap doesn't seem like egregious, although it does feel like double work, which it technically is. But Kevin, did you want to add something?
Yeah, it was just Toli's comment just like jump started my memory. And then it was, if you check back at that March 6th date, it might be when he switched over to the maintainers tag stuff that he mentioned.
Right. That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's really like, I mean, there's stuff we could do about it, but it might not be, it's probably not worth the time to do.
Right. At least in the short term. Yeah. Okay. Great. And then just quickly, GSOC seems to be progressing nicely, and we're just sort of tracking that. Last week, I just talked to Rob and just made sure that, we just want to make sure that, he's being mentored. We're working together well with the Internet Archive in terms of mentorship for the student. And it sounds like they're definitely talking on their side until, and so hopefully, the stuff that we're working on is just the stuff that we know that the Internet Archive side can't necessarily know to help the student. Something that he did say was that maybe we can, and I think there's an issue with that, but if not, I'll double check on that. But, because I noticed that there was like some linting issues with the student's code. And so, that's something certainly I think the Internet Archive could mentor the student on. But Rob made a good point too, that like our Circle CI implementation should be able to pick up linting and things like that. So there might be some configs to adjust there, just to sort of throw an alert immediately and automatically to the student to know that, or any contributor to know that like they're not following some sort, standard like Python and pip 8 styling conventions. So that's something we can sort of improve on too, and that'll help everybody. Other than that, that's all I have. I know Kevin has a hard stop. So if there are any last questions or comments, please air them now. Otherwise, we can take it offline. Cool. Thanks for your time, everyone. Toli, can you stick around afterwards for a quick call? Okay, great. All right, great to see everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
See you all.